Speaking of a fantastic coach that JMU has hired, Bob Chesney, he continues to build out his coaching staff. Bennett wrote about over on JMUsportsnews.com, our home on the web. Can you kind of go over who JMU has added? They added Lyle Hemphill, the Duke co-defensive coordinator. So Power 5 experience, bringing him over as the defensive coordinator. They brought in Dean Kennedy as the offensive coordinator. He's kind of this young gun type of coach who got all his grad assistance and early start in the SEC. He comes down from Holy Cross after he spent, I think, just 1 full year as their offensive coordinator, was there for 2 years as a quarterbacks coach as well. But how has this coaching staff been building on? What are your initial thoughts on it?
Pretty good staff, and they've kind of got it mostly locked in. I think they've yet to have like the running backs coach leak. But yeah, you mentioned Kennedy's going to coach the offense, and he'll be the quarterbacks coach as well, which I had originally missed.
You know my hot take?
Yes.
They might be getting a running back coach who's like a Power 5 guy who's still in a bowl game.
Oh, I like that. That's a good take. That would make sense.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll keep an eye out for that. Robo coming back along the offensive line. They got Justin Harper to coach the wide receivers. He had recently coached tight ends at ODU. Also spent 4 years recently coaching Towson's receivers. So pretty good experience. He's a Virginia Tech grad. Drew Kanan is going to do special teams and tight ends, which is what he did at Holy Cross, I believe.
It's common for special teams coordinators to do that. Very interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. He's a good one, though. Their special teams units are nuts. So that's a big time hire. And that was early that one was announced. You mentioned Hemphill. Interesting one, right? Because he was at Duke when their defense this year was big time. Wake Forest for 3 years as the DC. They weren't all that great in terms of like scoring defense those years.
Not very good at all. He was their defensive coordinator from 2018 to 2021. The best his defense ever ranked in scoring defense was 76th in the nation, which was 2019. So in 2021, they ranked 88th, 2020, 90th, 91st, 2019, 76th, and 2018, 102nd. So he's coached safeties and defensive backs and things of that sort throughout his career and has found success. He started at Hofstra, moved around, found his way to Stony Brook. He was out there on Long Island having himself a good time and coached some really good FCS defenses, some really good FCS back ends. At Wake, he was a good safeties coach, but when he took over that defensive coordinator role, the defense just was never that dominant. And I remember you and I would text watching Wake games in 2020 and 2021. And it was just like, okay, if they could just not allow 76 points, Sam Hartman would be undefeated. But then he did do well with Duke at his last stop.
Yeah, I think overall you're probably pretty pleased, but it's one I've seen some JMU fans like dunking on people like, we got Power 5 guys. To be clear, there was a shift in the Duke coaching staff. So they're getting guys who are like looking for jobs. They didn't poach him from Duke. The same is true of the strength and conditioning coach, Jason Novak, who comes from Michigan State. Both those hires, I think, are big time, right? You got Power 5 experience for some good schools. But again, Novak was, I think, looking for a job because Michigan State had that turnover. But those are still pretty
weird turnover at Michigan State.
Yeah, that's pretty good hires there. I like those. Sam Daniels, defensive line. I can't remember if we talked about that last time, but I think it was after the bowl they announced it. So was coaching at Delaware as their defensive line coach. He's been at Richmond, Howard, Bridgewater, and then played it at JMU. They have Zach Sparber, who is a defensive analyst with Duke. So he's worked with Hemphill. He's going to coach the linebackers. I was also a grad assistant at Virginia Tech. Eddie Whitley is staying on. He's going to coach in the secondary. I think I have some of this wrong. Kyle Barnes is on the coaching staff, but I don't think he's going to coach corners, although I don't think that's been officially announced. But he'll be on the staff. And then they have Anthony DiMichele, who I believe is also going to do secondary stuff, and definitely doing a bunch of recruiting, coordinating stuff for them. And he's an interesting one because he's coached running backs and special teams and safety, so they can kind of plug him wherever. So I think, basically just looking for the running backs coach. But it's a good staff. They got Power 5 experience. They have some Holy Cross, and then they have some guys who are retained from the previous JMU staff.
And they're going to add another Power 5 running backs coach, according to my hunch.
according to your hunch. That's what we're hearing.
Yeah, but I really like this staff. I think it'll be really good. I'm a little sad that we lost that entire coach. I'm not so much sad we lost Signetti, but like Shanahan is going to be a Power 5 head coach soon. Pat Kuntz, Brian Haynes, Tino Sincere, like those guys were just dogs. And these guys could be too. I'm just a little sad we lost all of them.
Fair. I do think some fans probably got to pump the brakes a little bit on like we've upgraded the whole staff. That staff was good.
That staff was. You hear it in the post game, the interviews, like when Cole Potts was just like, we have a coach that actually cares about us now. And like, was just an unprompted shot across the bow to Curt Cignetti.
Yeah.
The reason that team was great was, I think, in spite of Curt Cignetti. Like, no. That sounds wrong. I think Cignetti was great at hiring coordinators and great at hiring people around him. Like if you took Cignetti out of that equation and you had all of those coordinators, that team probably doesn't take a huge step backwards.
I think that's fair.
I'm not trying to like take another shot at Cignetti as he's on his way out. I already did that with my tweet. I've muted Cignetti. I'm good. I'm done with that. I just think like his strength was being that CEO coach and putting great people around him. And this is going to be on paper another good staff. But yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a vast, huge upgrade just because they have guys from Duke and Michigan State. Cool. Duke played Troy in a bowl, and Michigan State was a tire fire for the last 2 seasons.
They're
too harsh?
They're physical. No, it's just I wouldn't assume that everything's like amazing just because of what you're seeing on paper. Definitely don't say it's an upgrade. I would say that like let's pump the brakes on it. Maybe it is.
Everett Withers coached for the New York Giants.
Right.
If he was added to this coaching staff tomorrow with NFL experience, I don't think he's an upgrade as a defensive backs coach.
2 of the coaches I'm most excited about were Holy Cross carryovers.
Oh, I'm so hyped for Dean Kennedy.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I think he might be an upgrade.
He could be really, really good. So I'm excited about the staff. I think it's a good one. But again, a lot of it comes down to also like you can scheme some stuff up. You can be really encouraging, but like, who are your guys? Who's on your roster? So how they do in the portal and who they add to replace a lot of starters will be important as well.
Yeah, and as portal season rolls on, we'll continue covering that with the transfer portal tracker. And every time there's a big transfer addition, we'll be sure to cover it here on the JMU Sports News Podcast.